You're live with Steve Perry on No Dumb Questions. KDQ, real questions from real people. Don't know how to win. I've been waiting on you, babe. What's up? What's up? What's up? I am super excited tonight. Welcome to No Dumb Questions. I'm your host, Dr. Steve Perry. Down here, if you could see him, is my dog Ditto. He comes over to join us each night. And I'm excited because we're going to have the kind of conversation that many of you need. You want to understand what's going on inside our schools. We've just come back from the pandemic. And for those of us who are in schools, we see what's really going on. You get to watch what's being said on the internet, in media, and as a result, you may have an opinion on what matters to us, what's happening in the schools. But you, if you don't work in schools, don't know. You might be a parent and you have your own set of concerns, or you might be someone who's interested in what's happening in our community. But tonight, we have leaders in the community from all over the country. And what's important about that is these are educators who have either founded or run schools in the communities that matter the most, the communities that are most often hurt. They say that when the white community has a cold, the black community has COVID. Well, the black and Latin community might have COVID. And in this case, you're going to get to meet people who I, quite frankly, admire. They're brothers and sisters who I get to work with through a couple of organizations that we've started to make sure there are more black and Latin-led charter schools. One of the reasons why this conversation is also important is because this is a conversation for us, by us, about us. So the people you are going to meet tonight, if you don't already know them, are individuals who are from our community, for our community, and have either started or run schools in our community. I want to start with my sister from New York, Miriam Rocca. Pull her. Hey, sis.
Hey. Hey,
I
hey,
want to
hey.
I want to say thank you to you for joining me, because I know that you really do run schools. And I don't know that people understand what it's been like for us to run schools. So can you start by first introducing yourself? Tell us about where you come from, your background, and then more importantly, where are you now? What's the name of the schools you're at?
Well, it's wonderful to be with you, Dr. Perry.
Thank you so much.
And hello to Ditto. My furry friend Hugo is over here. He will let himself be known at some point in the evening. Um, my name is Miriam Rocca. I'm the executive director of Bronx Charter School for the Arts, which is actually one school, we say, but it's actually an elementary school and a middle school, which are in two different locations. In the South Bronx, one's the Bronx River separates our two schools. Um, and we're an art school, so we are all about rigor, creativity, and warmth, and making sure that our kids have all of that all the time. You asked me to say a little bit about where I'm from. I'm from Arizona, um, so it's a long way from the South Bronx, but New York has been home for a long time, and the Bronx is really one of the most incredible communities I've ever been a part of. So,
Real quick, can you tell us about the makeup of your school? The
sure.
ethnic makeup of your school?
We're about 78% Latino, 20 something percent African American, and I suppose that's probably not right. 80, 20, 70, 30, something like that. Latin and African diaspora.
Okay, cool. All right, next up, thanks so much. I want to bring in really my brother from Philadelphia, David Hardy, is a pioneer in education. Somebody I look up to, and what's super cool is I get to work with him through an organization that we founded called the Freedom Coalition for Schools. And he's somebody I had known about before I met. And when we were in Houston about to protest the Democratic debates, he and I were both handed a marker, and no one cared that we were such or so. They said, write something on this. And there are more over there when you're done with this one.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your school and just really just the makeup of your school?
Okay. Well, thanks for having me tonight, Steve. I'm originally from Philly, born and raised here in Philadelphia.
They're going to hear the accent.
Yeah. Spent some time away from Philly in the Midwest, but came back here in the early 80s, basically working in the corporate world. And in the late 80s, I took a flyer and decided to do something different. And so I started as a substitute teacher in a alternative school. And I really didn't like it that much. And I thought the kids were a little crazy, but something made me come back the next year. And that was the year that hooked me. And I never left. And it's been, I spent 19 years in that school. In 2007, I started an all-male college preparatory school here in Philadelphia called Boys Latin. When I started it, Black males in this city graduated at less than a 50% rate, and of those who graduated, they went to college at about 23%. Most of those going to 1 or 2 year programs. The completion rate for Black males back then was 8%. The 4-year college completion rate. So, we had our work cut out for us. In the 9 years that we had, our first 9 years of graduating classes, we sent the most African-American males to college than any school in Pennsylvania, public, private, charter, parochial, anybody.
And I just want to pause there, brother, because I want to pause there because I want to pause there. I need our viewers to understand that you're looking at successful educators. So I want you to really understand the depth and gravity of the team of people who are part of this conversation. Philadelphia is a big city. Pennsylvania is a big state. And Boys Latin sent more Black boys to college than any school in the state, not just the city, but in the state of Pennsylvania. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right. So when we're talking to David Hardy, we're talking to somebody who has a sense of what's required to move our community forward. And then because we're gonna get started now, and I want to pull up my guy. Did we lose Ricardo? Ricardo's always on the go. Hardy will tell you that. There's never a time that Ricardo, he's going to come back in a moment. But so when Ricardo comes back, Ricardo's from the West Coast. He's going to help us out. Let's start here. Sister Miriam, I know she likes to be called that. Miriam, can you talk about what you experienced during the pandemic with our children? What were some of the immediate issues that just popped right up?
Well, the very first thing was how do we keep in touch with them, right? How do we keep educating them? How do we keep true to our mission, right? So the minute we decided that we were going to close down our school, which was literally like a week before the DOE did,
That's the Department of Education. Those are the traditional schools.
Education.
Everybody's not from New York.
I have to apologize because there are sirens.
You're in New York.
My dog will start howling because he has to warn
you are
me
in New York.
that we're in New York. Exactly. So we really sprung into action to figure out how are we going to get them hotspots? How are we going to make sure that they had laptops that they could communicate with us? How are we going to get them musical instruments and art supplies? Because that's our mission and that's what's important to us. So those were the things that we went to right away. And then pretty quickly, we realized that some of them didn't have enough to eat. So we started to figure out how could we get food to our families. Those were the things that were sort of consistently issues. We also realized some of them, many of them lost work. And so we set up a fund so that if anybody needed, money for rent or anything, we could make sure that we got that to them. So we got food to many, many, many of them throughout the entire initial steps of the pandemic. And then we made sure that they had internet connection and that they had funds so that they didn't have to worry about rent and those sorts of things. Those were the sort of immediate things, and I'm sure Dr. Hardy, it was the same in Philadelphia, I would imagine.
Exactly the same, and the first thing was just getting the connectivity, making sure that everybody had a way of connecting. And here's something that we ran into. I don't know if you ran into this in New York. They gave out hotspots. The school district gave out hotspots. Mm-hmm. And they also had a reduced rate from the cable provider. And it was a lower rate, a lower service for low income people. Mm. Okay. So if you took that, what we found out is that once you had more than two people on the computer at once, you pretty much blew the thing. People who had 2 and 3 and 4 kids, plus they were working at home, that didn't work at all. It sounded great, great advertisement, we care about you, it's going to be cheaper. It didn't work. So we wound up having to get a lot more hotspots for people, because we knew we could get 3 or 4 people on a hotspot and it would be all right. So it was a lot of stuff like that. And like you said, there's a difference between the way we and other charter schools and even other private schools operated versus the way the traditional public schools did.
I'm gonna come back to you right now. I see my man Ricardo's on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my guy. Ricardo Morales is a freedom fighter. Literally, if you see Ricardo, he's not in a car. You should call the police, because somebody might be trying to hold our brother hostage, and we need to do something about it. Whether he's in the car with kids, taking them somewhere, whether he's heading across country to protest something or to get something going. To say that he is somebody I admire is truly an understatement. Brother Ricardo, talk to us about your school and yourself. Don't wave to him, Miriam. You trying to be professional?
I'm sorry. Hola, Ricardo.
Oh, here you waving now.
I'm sorry.
And don't wave back. Good Lord, I'm trying to act like a grown up, and y'all waving at each other.
I'm sorry.
Ricardo,
tell us about.
See you, Ricardo.
First of all,
hello everybody, and Dr. Steve, thank you for allowing me to come on. I'm going to follow some of what was said already. I was originally born in El Paso, Texas. I'm Chicano, I'm Tejano. And, I run a school in Los Angeles. I did live in New York for a bunch of years. Really love New York. My son lives in New York, and I even lived in Harlem for a little while. So I feel very connected. And our school is only 98% Latino, and we have almost 300 students. We're in our 17th year, and I want to follow what Dr. Hart is saying, because of the 200 and some public high schools located within the Los Angeles Unified School District, Academia Avance ranks in the top 2% in terms of the number of students that we get enrolled in college. And then even within that, the majority of our students are going to 4-year schools. So we're really proud about what we're able to do in a neighborhood that most people just kind of write off. Oh, your kids is from there. Yeah, well, good luck with that. But we're able to do it. And then to your last point, Steve, we're getting ready to go to the native village, the Chumash village, Huixtoyo, tomorrow. We're taking 8th graders. And so there's always a project that we're working on that is off campus in the real world, so that the kids can see more about what their options are.
Ricardo, you said you went out for a second. You said you're in the what % in terms of performance?
top 10% of the public schools located within El Unified School District in terms of the number of kids that we send to universities.
So what I want us to do, and I want to make sure that people understand that we're talking to educators who are educating today, people who have either founded schools or work in schools that are in the heart of the matter. And so when we're talking about performance, we're talking about educators from across the country. You have Philadelphia, New York, and Los Angeles, and of course, Connecticut and New York in my little contribution here. But I don't think that people outside of the school, the politicians and those pundits, those thumb pundits who get themselves all riled up on culture wars online, have any sense of what the heck is going on. What are some of the things, Ricardo, that you're seeing in your schools in LA, your school in LA, that you think would blow people's minds? Like, they're so different from what they think is going on. Did I lose you, Ricardo?
No, I'm here. In terms of difference, right? I'm understanding what is it that we're doing different, right? And I want to emphasize that our school, and we came together with about 20 other schools in Los Angeles to form what's called the Proyecto Ya Collective. And Proyecto Ya stands for Project Now, right now, right? To build trust, because when the pandemic started, everyone was waiting for some kind of guidance. What should we do? What do we listen to? And either the guidance wasn't coming, or worse, it was confusing, it was conflicting, or flat out wrong. So we needed to build trust with our families right away, and we did it by working with other schools. But I'd like to tell a quick story, right? So early on, and actually this was in May, if you recall, there was a scare, everything shut down. And then in California, in May, lots of companies started to open up again. Well, who were the first workers that were getting called back? It wasn't all the folks with the luxury of doing remote work. It was our parents, our families, the workers that were making it safe for everybody else by going to work. Those were our families, right? The ones who had to stay on so that it can get everything delivered to them, right? So we had a family right off. Mom went to work. Within a week, she got COVID. Single mom, 3 kids. We reached out to her right away. We were able to get a rapid response team, bring them materials. And this is the point I wanted to make. Even her own family was like, her exact words, "I feel like I have leprosy. My own family won't even come to see us," right? But we were able to get food and provisions to this mom that was holed up in a hotel to try to get through the pandemic, right? But by staying focused on our kids and families, we built trust. And so down the line, as everything kept changing, they changed with us. So here's one last point to make, Steve, that this past August, when it came time to start up for this academic year, we had 100% of our staff vaccinated and 100% of our kids vaccinated by October. But we did that because we had built the trust with the families. They would say, okay, we weren't going to get vaccinated, but if you're saying this is what we need to do, if the school is saying that, and I can go get vaccinated at the school, I'll do it.
So, Miriam, thank you so much, Ricardo. I see you shaking your head, Miriam. Is that what you experienced as well? Your parents were the first ones to go back to work too?
Absolutely. They're the essential workers, right? So yes, they were absolutely the first ones to go back to work. I will say, while we did have 100% of our teachers vaccinated, having younger kids, and I think that's a lot of it. It's not quite the same. It wasn't quite the same as it was rolled out for high school kids could get the vaccines first. Middle school students were later. And some of our elementary schools students just recently were able to get the vaccine. But that idea of trust is absolutely essential. And as I said earlier, as we were really trying to make sure that we kept in contact with our families and our people, in my school, as I'm sure probably in yours as well, much of our staff are from the community, right? So they live in the community, have lived in the community, raised their children in the community, and live near all of the families. So we had members of our operations team partnering with Jose Andres, who was feeding families out of the point in Hunts Point. And, she was in the community. She had her kids helping her deliver food to families in the community. And it was that sort of service that I think really brought home that sense of, no, these are our people. So when they say something, we're going to trust that what they're saying is what we need to listen to.
So these are our schools in our community. And what that means for you is that your faculty is in the community, in and from and by and for the community. David, I want to talk a bit about that. There's a teacher shortage. How's that impacting the work that you're doing in Philly?
Well, it absolutely impacts the work we do. We've struggled to get teachers. One thing that did help us is that a couple of years ago, we started a teacher development program in conjunction with the Center for Black Educator Development here in Philly and with Drexel University. So we had 10 guys who came to work at Boys Latin, and 6 of them were alumni of the school. And they all work now at the school. 2 of them teach Latin, 2 math, 1 English, 1 history. And it does make a big difference. Excuse me?
You grew your own.
That's what you got to do. In the old movie, The Untouchables, Sean Connery told Kevin Costner, he said, if you don't want to get a rotten apple, don't get it out of the barrel, pick it off the tree. We grow our own right off the tree. You don't have to worry about them coming in with bad habits or bad attitudes. And plus, these guys went here, and I can't tell you how much more powerful that is, that you have somebody. I mean, we're a pretty strict school. We have strict uniform code, lots of work. And you have a teacher who sat in that chair just like you did and went through the whole process like you. That's a dramatic kind of relationship you can build with that kind of person. So,
Ricardo, I see you shaking your head. Are you in a similar situation? Is that how you get teachers?
Absolutely. And I think it's a milestone for charter schools, for any school, but for charter schools, because we're on a 5-year cycle in California, that be able to bring your student back. And actually, you're not bringing them. And let me argue you, Dave, they're choosing to go back to your school. And so we have, I think, over 15 of our alum that have chosen to come back and with us, including from our very first class who finished her undergrad, got her master's and at USC, and is now in a senior role for our consulting staff. So absolutely, I agree that that's the measure of the school who's choosing to come back.
Absolutely is. How many people who teach school can say that I work with 15 people that went here? How many people can say that? People who work at schools with 3,000 kids can't say that. He's got 300.
That's the unspoken promise of charter schools, that so deep is the commitment to the school from the parents, then to the scholars, that many of them come back to work at the school. We're in the same situation. There are a number of our colleagues who I got the chance to participate in their education as they were growing up. I had a great conversation with Dean Borders this morning. Dean Borders was a student at Capitol Prep before he went to Morehouse, and he came back. And so to sit and talk to him as the dean, the academic dean at one of our high schools is pretty dope. When we look at some of the, go ahead.
No, if I can insert, because we want to emphasize on the pandemic, the COVID thing, it gave us an opportunity, right? I mean, the federal government is pushing money. The state is pushing money on schools to hold employees. So then we got the word out, especially to a lot of students that were struggling in their first and second year in college. Hey, we need people. Come work for us. right? And so we were able to pick up like 10 students at the beginning of this academic year to help us with our pandemic protocols, right? So it worked both ways.
When right now, if we look at what's being talked about in social media, and I guess we would refer to as traditional media, cable news, what they're talking about are issues like defunding police, CRT. I mean, those are things that they're talking about. Is that what you guys are dealing with, like today? Did any of those issues make their way into the things that you guys dealt with at all?
Let me tell you something. While we were having this pandemic through COVID, and we were also having a pandemic in Philadelphia of violence. And during this pandemic, I lost 5 guys. I have five guys shot. One former student was shot and murdered. He was shot in the car with his son. He and his 6-year-old son were shot. Fortunately, the boy survived, but the father did not. I had 2 other guys coming out of a rec center, a recreation center in their neighborhood at 4 in the afternoon, and got shot in the crossfire between guys that were so far away they should never even been in the crossfire. These were the worst shooting guys I've ever seen. But one of those guys were killed. Another 2 guys were riding in a car going to play basketball. They were shot. One of them was killed. In a pandemic, when you're worried about disease, we still have violence. All the other things that are going on in our neighborhood didn't stop because it was the pandemic.
I would say they increased, if nothing else, right? We've seen a tremendous increase in violence in the South Bronx. We've had a child involved in a shooting. We've had, luckily, no one has been shot, but there's also a rise in recruitment from gangs, which is something that we've seen a ton of as well.
Keep going with that, because I want you to, because people need to understand. Miriam runs elementary and middle school. I just want to point out, because you guys hear South Bronx, you think, of course it's South Bronx. No. Elementary and middle school recruitment for gangs. That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah. What I've learned is middle school is the area that they recruit gang members from, because they don't have records yet. So they're sort of under the radar, so to speak. So they can commit crimes and it won't sort of become a real big issue for the gang. This is what I've just learned. But yes.
They're so malleable and eager to please.
Exactly. And we love them, right?
Yeah.
They're so malleable and easy to please.
Yeah, but yeah.
So that's definitely been increasing. And I think, just to say that the violence is, in my opinion, it's emblematic of the pain and the suffering that our communities have been going through, right? Like, there was somebody in the subway recently. Of course, there's tremendous violence against Asian Americans in New York City and around the country. And that I blame fully our former president for. You're not fully, but very much so. But our communities have just suffered, and they've been going through so much pain, and the things that you hear on the news are so much about, it's almost like it's an expression of that pain, the violence and the anger. And like you said, when the world gets a cold, or when the regular communities get the cold, we get COVID. And they felt that, I think, especially young people. They felt that their communities, right? Because at the same time that they were going through COVID, they were also going through the racial recognition or whatever.
Reconciliation,
whatever,
Yep.
the lack thereof, with George Floyd and all of those things, which all of our kids felt tremendously personally. And so here, I think they really felt that this community, this world, this country doesn't care about us, and we're suffering and we're hurting. The good news is that our schools did care about them, and they knew that as well.
What are the implications? So we hear the big topics, right, Ricardo? We hear them talking about George Floyd and the protest spring, and hashtagging Black Lives Matter. But what did that mean to the scholars who you educate?
Well, I mean, there's. Let me get to your specific question, but first off, I remember that I did a great project in the summer of 92 in the South Bronx. So I feel connected to the South Bronx there. And our school, similar to the nerds that are of our other guests, sits on the intersection of 4 different gangs. And so the pressures of the youth violence is huge in our neighborhood. Even with all the gentrification stuff that's happening, it's still huge in terms of what happens in our neighborhood. And so now my heart goes out to the news that David is sharing with us and Miriam's sharing with us. Fortunately, we haven't had that kind of stuff hit us. But to your specific question, is that all the mental wellness issues are massive now on schools, in our school in particular. We've dramatically increased our staff, the way that we teach, the focus of all the adults, the conversations that we have with our parents.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second because I want you to go a little deeper than that, because I know what you're talking about, and I know that David knows what you're talking about. I know Miriam knows. When you say that there's been an increase in mental health issues among our scholars, among your scholars in LA, what can you be more specific? What's happening in the school?
Okay, so I mean, there's the Maslow's hierarchy, right? This straight education theory. You can't have a kid focus on fractions or the Civil War or science in any way if what they're really worried about is, you know what, my mom told me she's got COVID today or yesterday, and I don't know if we're going to have the money to pay the rent, right? So you got to help these kids solve their family issues before you can get to the academic issues. So that's one simple level. But it's so compounded, the issues of identity and also the issues of sexual identity, all that issues that have come on in the last couple of years. So from the same pressures, the issues of the pandemic have made it hard for kids to be able to focus on their academics. So to your point, if the faculty of your school, if the faculty of our school isn't able to meet kids where they are on those issues before they start jumping in on I'm a highly credentialed awarded teacher in math. Yeah, but guess what? They ain't going to listen to that. If you don't listen to them first and get to where they are, then you could say, okay, let's help you. I'm not an expert in housing law, but the school can get you something on that. Now let's talk about fractions. Now let's talk about that. So it's go to where they are first. But to your point, Dr. Perry, is that right now there's so many additional layers that you have to get through before you can get to the academics.
David, we talk about our kids being shot at or murdered and then they went to a basketball game. Mm-hmm. It is something that we speak of, excuse me, and it almost seems like people expect that. But the truth is, our kids don't expect that. They're children just like everybody else's kids. They want to do the same fun things that other people's kids do. They don't want to be gangsters. They don't want to murder people. In the past year, we've lost 2 former students as well through guns. Mm-hmm. And talk about what happens to a school of our kids, right? People look at our kids and think, oh, they're so hard. They're children. I don't care how old they are. When one of them is murdered or injured, what happens to the school as a whole? Talk to me the next day. What's going on?
Well, that kind of there's this myth about the tough inner city kid. like they're so much tougher that they don't have emotions, they don't have feelings, and they can't get clobbered by the enormous amount of pressure that they have. And so that myth, you just have to dispel that right away. We deal with a lot of kids who come in dealing with some serious problems at some very young ages, as Miriam probably knows. Look, we're in high school. We've got kids who their problems have been baked in for 6, 7, 8 years at that point. Miriam's getting them when they're having a problem in 3rd grade or 2nd grade. Just as big of a problem. And if you don't have a school that is keenly aware
of trying to deal with that kind of thing. That doesn't mean you dwell on it or that's an excuse not to work or none of that. But the point is that it's real. It's like if they came in and they had a cut on their arm, you'd have to, dress that arm and do that before you start telling them about algebra. Now, they have emotional scars, emotional wounds. They have family problems. Look, here's a big problem I had. We had high school guys who all of a sudden, who had good attendance, all of a sudden online, their parents are making excuses for them because they're not there. And it was weird until I figured out why. The parent lost the job. The kid can go out and get a job. The boys will wind up supporting the family. And that's why the parent had to make an excuse for him. I mean, that's the kind of people, they talk about they solve their own problems. Might not be the solution you want or I want, but they come up with a solution, believe me.
Mary, is that what you're seeing as well?
We've seen so many different things. I was just writing a note to mention that, last month we had 4 children in the middle school who were hospitalized for suicidal ideation. Like when we talk about mental health, we don't
just pause there for a second, Miriam, because I just want people to hear what you just said. Because we think, oh, those tough Black and Latin kids in the hood.
Exactly.
Because
tell them what grade she has to get into.
6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Little kids.
12-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
I just want, and I want you to continue your point because I gotta stop us here. These are 4 children, 4, who are under the age of 13, hospitalized with suicidal ideations. I want people to understand what this means. When you come to your guidance counselor and you say, I don't feel well, you don't get hospitalized.
Right.
When you come to your guidance counselor or your social worker or a teacher in your school and you say, I could just kill myself sometime, they're not putting you in a hospital for that. In order for them to put you in a hospital, you have to have a reasonable plan and method. I need people to understand what that means. It's not like, oh man, I would just kill myself. My boyfriend doesn't like me anymore. I could just kill him. In order to hospitalize someone, you have to prove that this is imminent. Like it could happen at any moment, that this person can at any moment kill themselves. At any moment.
Like you could tell.
We're fighting with the families, right? Because they may not really understand the risk as being real, but we know the risk is real. And sometimes we're fighting with families to say, no, this has to happen and it has to happen now. It's, and people think that mental health shows itself in our communities differently than it shows itself in other communities, right? In our communities, kids fight or they get guns. No, kids kill themselves in our community too.
Yeah, exactly. David, I'm going to come to you and then I'm coming to you, Ricardo.
Good, Ricardo. Let's go to Ricardo.
No, I want to emphasize a point that as adults, right, as humans, and we're evolving to adults, I know it took me a long time, a really long, maybe too long, but it took a long time to finally figure out as an adult, hey, you know what? I need help from other people to solve this problem. And then you learn how to reach out and get help. 12-year-olds don't know that. Middle school kids don't know that. High school kids don't know that. For that matter, neither do college kids, right? But these are humans that haven't figured out how to work with others to solve their problems. So they go deep into themselves and they hide out. And this is where, as adults, you have to be finding those kids. You have to be looking for them, and you have to give them the services. Over and over again, we hear of the extreme other case of the young person who went off, got a weapon, and started shooting people. And were there no adults looking at the evidence that was there? That didn't happen one day to the next. That is our role as school leaders, as adults in this modern world. Find the kids around you and find out what they need.
It's about the relationships, right? It's about having relationships. I'm sorry, Dr.
It's like, teachers will say, well, a fight just erupted in the class. No, it didn't. You can see that fight walking in the door in the morning. Okay?
You can see it 2 days before.
You can see that fight walking in the door because it was likely the person at the front of the class who you knew couldn't control the class. And so something was about to jump off.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, about that.
Let's call it what it is. There's some people's classes where the kids wouldn't even dream of acting up. And then there are other people's classes that they go in to fight. So I want to shift a bit, because I really want to bring people's attention to what it is that we're dealing with for real. Again, I go back to, we see the conversations. I sometimes will stumble onto social media and I'll see people going at each other's heads about CRT or not CRT or all this other stuff. And I think, damn, when I'm talking to my brothers and sisters about running schools, it just never comes up. We just never have these conversations. It literally, we're trying to figure out how to stop these two parents who about to come down there and fight from fighting. Like, for real.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't give a damn what if I could find someone who could teach critical race theory to children, I would be like, damn, can you show me someone? Because I'm just trying to find somebody who comes to work every day, gives me 110% for my kids, who actually does who does the annotations of their lesson plans the night before, comes in and delivers them. They could teach anything at that point. Right. I don't even care. For me, I just want to see them teach. And so I get enraged when I see these gangsters going at each other and culture wars and they're so excited about this, and none of it means anything to any of us. It doesn't mean anything. Like, literally, we go we have an organization called Black, Latin, Asian Charter Collaborative, or Black, and then we have another organization called the Freedom Coalition for charter schools. And in both cases, they're Black and Latin leaders of charter schools from throughout the United States of America, founders and operators of some of the schools that, if I said some of the names of the people, you say, oh, I know that guy, or I know that woman. You do. Yeah, well, they're all part of these groups. They are all part of these groups, and they're impressive people and parents and the like. But when we're coming together talking, what are we talking about? What are the issues that I think that we are focused on? I think that's what people need to know.
Number one, I'm sure everybody's going to say the same thing. Learning loss. My God, we got kids who haven't been educated for a year and a half, 2 years, and we got a lot of catching up to do. And you don't catch up by doing this thing at the same pace. If you're behind in a race, you have to run faster or you'll never catch up. We have to figure out, and we can't make these kids do things. We have to learn how to be more efficient, how to teach them more efficiently and teach them more in a shorter period of time. The pressure is on us. And we don't want to, don't act like they're the ones who came in. Well, you can't, not their fault. It's our job.
Ricardo,
it's a tough job.
Ricardo, jump in. But Ricardo, what percentage of, or if you know, I don't put you on the spot. What percentage of your children are we call them L's on the East Coast, English as a second language? However you refer to children for whom English is their first language?
Right. There's lots of different numbers, but just consider half of these students are from mixed language families, and they're learning English, or they're so easy half. But I want to pick on two particular words here: critical and loss, right? And I'm going to do a little semantics here. Not that I'm disagreeing with you guys, but there's no such thing as learning loss. They were learning. They just weren't learning what we thought they were learning.
Right. There you go.
Right. And they were learning how, as a society, do we adapt to a pandemic? That's what they were learning. Were we good at giving them good examples and making sure that they learned? I believe our school is good at having kids learn, hey, we got to adapt. Let's adapt. Right. So as an example, Omicron came out of nowhere. Were we going to be ready to change the whole operations model to be safe. And they did. We switched it right up. So that's an example. The other one, though, and because you said it so many times already now, Dr. Perry, is critical race theory is just history, right? It's just history. Are you teaching accurate and comprehensive history? Of course you're going to be critical, right? And so to your point then, David Hardy, is that if we can be critical now, not just in history or race theory or in anything, that can accelerate kids. If you take a critical approach, a questioning approach, which is what kids are always critical and questioning. But if you can adjust the material to be that way, then you'll get them faster and you'll be able to cover more. Right. So we did testing this week. We did in the middle of last year also. And our NWA map testing, the assessments that we use, we had our highest score ever last year. And this week we're coming up on matching it again. Right. Yeah. And so there is a way, and it comes back to relationship. Engage with your kids in a relationship that is critical, that's real. I think it's just called being real. And then they'll go with you and you can go faster with them.
I just want to remind, so the NWEA or MAP, NWEA MAP, it's not a rap group. It is a standardized assessment. It's a standardized test that 12 million children across the country take. Actually, Capital Prep, we take it as well. And it's a standardized assessment that measures skills, certain fundamental skills. And so when Ricardo is talking about his children's performance on that, it's on a standardized test. I want to bring that up because it is often seen as Black and Latin kids can't or don't do well on standardized tests. And I'll share with you, in our elementary school, we had in first and second grade, we saw some pretty big losses among our scholars who were the lowest performing. So the kids who were the furthest behind were the ones who we saw the biggest losses. However, one of our elementary school, we call our teachers illuminators. One of our elementary school illuminators who teaches ELA was able to increase the percentage of children who were at or above grade level significantly. So she was able essentially to stave off the pandemic because she just got down to the get down. What she did was she created a learning environment where relationships were key, but expectations, what was driving things. The children understand what levels they're on. She puts them in groupings and she takes the time to teach the groups what it is that they need to know. She doesn't put them in groups where they're going to be a caste, or she doesn't strategize just because children are below, but she does that and she creates those opportunities to teach need with those children who need the most support, allowing other children to be a bit more independent. And as a result, she doubled the number of children who were above grade level and almost doubled 88% increase in the children who were at grade level. So the pandemic has clearly had its impact. And I think that one of the places where the pandemic's greatest impact has been, is what I've seen, I would like to hear what you guys think about this, is quite frankly, the quality and the number of candidates that we're getting to fill empty positions. That's where the real challenge is for us. I don't know about you guys. Sometimes getting one or no people applying for the job at all to teach. Mm-hmm. And having, and I'm going to call it what it is, having faculty just dip on us, leave for the suburbs. Like straight up, it's October and I'm out. It's
or like, just don't show up. Don't show up or don't call, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's a real thing. Miriam, is that what you're experiencing as well?
Absolutely. We still have 10 positions open at our elementary school this year. We just, it's impossible.
10 out of how many, Miriam? 10 out of how many?
10 out of, I think we have, the elementary school, 30, 40 teachers.
A third.
Yeah, roughly a third. And so we have 2 teachers in every classroom. So that's a lot of where we see the shift. Some of them are out of classroom positions, but it's significant.
Steve, I'll say that we're not experiencing that. We don't have open positions. And then also we're not looking to hire. So we haven't kind of gone through that. I mean, we have a really solid core of folks that have been staying with us. However, it is impacting, right? And since you can't get substitute teachers, And a lot of our staff is out. Hey, my kid got COVID, or my dad got COVID, or I got to go do something. And so everyone knows we're going to be extremely flexible. And which means if that person's out, then the rest of us got to pick up the slack and go cover for them. And so we really we have invested a lot in trying to make sure we build trust with our faculty, with our staff. Hey, we're here to support you, but that means you got to do more, right? And they've stepped up. So that, because they know, hey, okay, this week I'm okay. I'll work extra to cover for that person, because who knows, 3 weeks later that might be me. And so we have this. Everyone is working more. They talk about burnout and stuff. I don't want to talk about that. I mean, and it's you can only increase the volume so much, but it is real. The pressure is real.
David?
Well, I was going to say, you're hearing a lot about teacher burnout, and a lot of that is real. But the fact is that there's some teachers doing some incredible things. So, and stepping it up like you wouldn't believe, teaching 2 or 3 classes more than they would have normally, or teaching at different levels. So, I mean, through all this and all the trials and tribulations, you still see some real heroes stepping up, and that's amazing to see.
I want to build on that, David, because I've seen that too. There are people we have on our team who I'll go to observe their class and just stay, like just thinking, oh my God, this is not normal what you're doing here. How are you doing this? And so there are the high points, but there is that very real truth, which is, I'm gonna just be real. I'm looking at my phone thinking, all right, who's calling out tomorrow? Like, it's Friday. We're gonna have a grown person conversation, right? It's Friday. Who's gonna be sick Friday and who's gonna be sick Monday?
Yeah.
I mean, again, because we got to have this conversation, because it's the totality of the story. These are the things we deal with. And what people don't understand is when a teacher doesn't come to work, all of their classes are empty. And in this pandemic, what that means is that not all of their classes are empty.
To get research.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He's already
Ricardo, we got
perfect. Yep.
So one of the things that happens, it wouldn't be a meeting with Ricardo if he didn't. This is all of it's what it is. Why we love him, multitasking man. But one of the things that people don't understand is when we're talking about teacher shortages, what we're saying is that there is no one to teach your child that day,
right?
At all. So if you think of it, most elementary schools have a teacher who teaches a grade.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that those children today are put in a position where if they learn anything, it'll be by luck. And the schools that experience that the most are schools like ours, where the majority of our children are Black and Latin. So what are you doing knowing that this is the case? How are you dealing with this?
I don't know how everybody else is, but I think the basic answer to that is the best way you can, because there's no roadmap for this. I've done this for 35 years. I've never seen anything like this.
Can you go deeper in that, David? Because I had Jeff Canada on, and he said he was educating during Jeff Canada, for folks who have been under a rock, is the head of the Harlem Children's Zone, which is just the greatest of the great. But he is too. But he said that he educated during the crack epidemic. He'd never seen anything like this before.
Yeah.
And you, David, are saying the same thing.
Yeah. This isn't even close, man. I have to tell you the truth. This isn't even close. Because with the crack epidemic, once you got them in school, that was outside. That wasn't in this. Like, this permeates everything you do.
Go ahead, Ricardo.
Yeah, no, I use this phrase all the time in that sometimes it's so bad, it's good. Right now, I mean, I was in New York during the crack moment, and that was horrible. And in some ways, I think it was worse than what we have right now. But this is what I mean. Because the pandemic is hitting so many levels, so deep, so across so much, the federal government wasn't throwing money at schools then like they are now.
Yeah.
Right. And so we need to take advantage of the fact that this is so all encompassing. It does allow us to look at situations and find and better solutions for it, which is different than moments like that one where, frankly, those communities just got written off. Too bad. You know, maybe you deserve it. You have a bad situation and they weren't there to help. We have to, the help that we're getting, but let's also remember that the help that we're getting right now for this pandemic, it's not going to last forever.
That's right.
And they're going to go back to some moment where, okay, we're pulling back. We need to use and get as much ahead as we can now to get ready for that pullback moment.
I gotta tell folks, you know, we're man, this went faster than I thought it was gonna go. And the only reason I know we got to come to a close because I know that each one of these people are on hour 14 of their day, and I happen to know in at least a couple of cases of people who are on this call, we still have another.
Wow.
Oh my God! I'm sorry, did I say that out loud?
Yes.
So I know that I know for them, they're literally on hour 14 of their days. And as is always the case with my man Ricardo, he is headed somewhere. God only knows where. But I hope you have an electric vehicle because the gas is too hot. And you are out in LA and it's only worse.
$5 a gallon, $5.20 a gallon.
Whoa.
I went electric. But what you guys, what you as viewers have seen is what I get to experience literally every day. I get to work with some of the most talented and committed and creative people in America who happen to be Black and Latin and who have decided to be educators. These folks could have done anything else in the world and made a lot of money doing it if money moved them. And excuse me, that each of you has chosen to do what it is that you do continues to inspire me. I wanted to have this conversation tonight, and we'll do this again because I just don't think that an hour is enough. But I also know that y'all have other adults in your life and children in your life who sometimes like to see you, and they don't want to see you with a camera in your hand or a mic in front of you, and as dinner's made and dogs are walking by and kids are coming in, I share those circumstances. But I do want to thank you all for what you do as my brothers and sisters in the work that we do. I know that we can't seem to make everyone understand what we do, but I think what we've done tonight is giving them insight into what Black and Latin charter schools are dealing with daily. Not all of it. This is a much longer conversation, and we'll have this conversation a lot more. And why such organizations are so important to the very health of our community. Without organizations such as ours, maybe those 4 children don't make it. And then of those 6 children who were shot and or killed, maybe the children who were left behind don't know what to do, and they turn to that life of crime. So we have to understand that the work that we do is vital to the community and our country. So we fight to make sure we expand access to Black and Latin-led charter schools in every single way that we can, so that individuals such as those who have come here this evening can have an opportunity to be a part of children's lives. You are looking at, between just the 4 of us, literally a couple thousand children who we represent. A couple thousand children. Just the 4 of us. And many of these children would never have seen themselves as headed to college until they set foot in our schools. So I want to thank you all for what you do. And I know we're going to have this conversation again very, very soon. I know some of us are going to have it in a little while.
Real soon.
In a little while, we're going to have this conversation, and it's going to be really short and very positive. We're going to move really fast. But I say that only in jest. I mean it when I say it, folks. If you haven't had a chance to see some of the Black and Latin-led charter schools in your state or in your community, why don't you reach out, take a look, and see what it is that they're doing in there. They're not for profit. They're not trying to do anything bad to hurt kids. They're really just trying to save our community. And I say this very bluntly, that Black and Latin people can't run schools in our community, and our community is doomed. And I happen to know that we can. You just heard from David Hardy that Boys Latin in Philadelphia is the #1 sender of Black boys to college in the state of Pennsylvania. And you heard from Brother Morales that his school, out in Los Angeles is in the top 10% of those that in terms of overall performance. So we can do it when we're given the opportunity, and we're going to continue to fight for it. Brothers and sisters, I thank you so much for your time. I thank you for staying dressed. I know that normally y'all would be hoodies and sweats by now. So we're going to go.
Only for you, my friend.
I appreciate that. Ricardo said to me, do I need to dress like you? I said, Ricardo, come as you. So I was expecting like a beret or something, Ricardo. Next time, I mean, like, you gotta.
This is for Ukraine.
Okay, there it is.
Ricardo
has got to have a meaning. Okay, exactly. Okay, as long as because I don't normally see you in this in necktie, so this is new to me. All right, so it's for Ukraine, for our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I really do appreciate you. You three know I deeply love you and deeply respect the work that you do, and am honored to just do some of the stuff that you do. Folks, thank you so much for joining us. For me, it's simple. The smartest person in the room is always the one who asks the best questions, not the one who has the most answers. There's no such thing as a dumb question. It's just a person who's unwilling to answer it. Thank you so much. Much love. Peace.